Thank you, thank you. So thank you for having me today. Not that anyone in this room had a choice about who gets to close out the keynote, but I really appreciate the time that you made today, and I'll start out by talking a little bit about who I am. And so again, my name's Alex Buckles. I'm based out of Orlando, Florida. I'm married with 3 children, ages 11, 12, and 13, 2 girls and a boy. Professionally, after I got out of the Marine Corps in 2005, I spent the next 18 years pretty much in enterprise revenue functions across sales, marketing, and partnerships. Across sales, marketing, and partnerships, and then I've been an entrepreneur since 2009, so I've had a lot of successes and a million failures. Anybody who wants to hear a little bit more about that, I'm happy to go into detail on that later. Lots of stories. But I currently have 4 ventures. I don't know if something happened to the screen. But I currently have 4 ventures, starting from the bottom, that are active. First, I'm the CEO and co-founder of RapidShots.com, and that's a SaaS platform that allows you to take photos you have of yourself, selfies and things like that, upload them, and then we can automatically generate LinkedIn professional-ready headshots. It's really cool. That headshot up there of me is AI generated. I never posed for that or wore those clothes ever. But anyway, so it works. It's pretty cool, and that's a very partnership-centric, business as well. So at the end of this month, we're going to have like a fully automated, embedded, so we can embed the technology into partner applications. And a really cool B2B partner-centric distribution model. Next above that, we have Forecastable. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Forecastable as well. That business has been around for a little over 5 years. And there we essentially help sales teams effectively co-sell with their partner ecosystem. So for those of you here and has ever done partner marketing, you do a bunch of joint marketing and you hand off these leads to sales reps that have absolutely no idea how to co-sell. Like 99% of sales reps don't know how to co-sell with a partner involved in a deal. And so through that technology, we allow all of these co-selling partners to communicate and collaborate through a single pane of glass, regardless of what CRM they're running in the background. And that, again, is another partner-centric business. We get distribution through sales training firms and services companies and educational companies along the way. Now, I am going to be getting out of those 2 businesses. I'm already in conversations with somebody to take over as CEO for Forecastable, and within 18 months, I plan on being out of the private business world. And so I'm basically going to start focusing the rest of my life on autism. And so that brings in the other 2 entities, Pathways for Autism, the CEO and founder of Pathways for Autism. And that's a services organization, and I'm going to go into detail on that here in a second. And because I didn't have enough to do, I decided to take an interim chief revenue officer position at Mentra just last month, which I'm going to get into great detail on that as well as we continue throughout the presentation. On that note, why am I getting out of the business in 18 months? I started thinking a lot about mortality. I'm like, hey, life's not guaranteed. I may not be here forever. Anything can happen at any given time. And so I just want to start, as soon as humanly possible. Let me switch gears here. It's not working. There we go. There we go. So I thought I'd start out by talking about, let's meet Sean Allaire. So Sean Allaire, he's somebody, as you can see, he's got a great resume on the right-hand side. He is somebody that I met when I was an enterprise account executive at Marketo, which was subsequently acquired by Adobe. Really great guy, father, husband, 2 young kids, 4 and 6, boy and girl. And last month, he went to the hospital. So he was starting to feel a little bit of nausea. And after several days, he went to the hospital, and they determined that he needed non-emergency appendix surgery, and they decided to, 2 days later. And so they kept him in the hospital overnight to, monitor him while he was waiting on his surgery. And a nurse came in the middle of the night to kind of unhook him so he can go use the restroom. And when she came back, to kind of hook him back up and stuff, he was seizing on the floor in cardiac arrest, and he ended up passing. So not good at all. He's 41 years old, so, really young and otherwise healthy individual. And that was just 3 weeks ago. That one hit me pretty hard. But as I was reading his obituary and pretty much complete disbelief that this had even happened, I found out or read that his family had gone through his phone and found a quote that I'm going to share with you all today that I hope is a gift for you. It was for me. And so the quote was, begin each day with, I get to, instead of I have to, because each day is a blessing. And so in that spirit, I get to share some of my experiences today with you that kind of led me to finding my life's purpose. And so, because finding your passions and using them to serve your life's purpose is one of the most fulfilling experiences you'll ever have. Now, Now let's focus on y'all for a minute. So like, have you defined your life's purpose? Have you at least written it down? Have you even thought about it? How does one even begin thinking about such a thing? And so, for me, purpose is synonymous with outcome. And so as you're breathing those last few breaths, it's like thinking to yourself, like, what outcomes did I deliver to myself? What outcomes did I deliver to the people around me? Or what outcomes did I deliver to the world? And so maybe by a show of hands, like, who here has written down their life's purpose or their outcomes? Wonderful. And by another show of hands, who here has heard of the word autism before? That's a lot. And last show of hands, who here personally knows someone who has autism or knows of someone with autism, or maybe you're autistic yourself? Wow. It's a lot of people. Well, there's a reason for that. 1 in 36 are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and most folks don't really know what it is, and so I thought I'd define it for y'all. And autism is a neurological condition that affects the way someone thinks, communicates, and behaves. And so their brains are kind of just wired differently. And because it's wired differently, there's like a broad spectrum of challenges and superpowers that these folks endure. And so there's like really high functioning people that are like changing the world and doing crazy awesome things, and there's people on the other end of the spectrum that are just completely dependent on others and aren't going to be able to live the independent life that they want to live, and there's a whole lot of people in between. So let's go through a few people we know that have autism. So one, let's start with Elon Musk. So like him or not, Elon Musk tends to be very direct and objective in pretty much everything that he does. And it can come across as cold-hearted. Maybe it is a little bit. I don't know. Some of his rules and showing up to work and the hours that he makes people work, I don't know. But, he can come across as cold-hearted, but, that's just the way his brain works. And I had a laugh because a couple of years ago, he was hosting Saturday Night Live. And in his opening monologue, he said, to anyone who I've offended with my Twitter post, I just want to say I reinvented electric cars, and I'm sending people to Mars in a rocket ship. Did you really think I was going to be a chill, normal dude? No, not the case. And then let's move on to somebody else. So there's Vikram Kumar. So Vikram Kumar is the older brother of Jilika Kumar, who's the CEO and co-founder of Mentra. We're going to talk about them a lot today. That's where I'm the interim CRO. Her brother is a non-speaking autistic, and so her entire life she got to witness like the barriers to inclusion for people with disabilities, and everyone kind of assumed that he just had a cognitive disability and that he didn't understand about what's happening around him or what's going on, and it wasn't until he was 27 years old where they taught him how to use a letterboard or a keyboard basically to start typing to communicate. And when he started typing to communicate, they realized that he actually was aware of everything that was going on around him, and he writes about how he was just trapped in his body, right? So he's just trapped in his body, and not only did they learn that he was really intelligent, but he could write Shakespearean-level poetry. And one of the very first things that he said he wanted was a job, and he communicated that. And so that's what caused Jilika to found Mentra. And then there's my son. So he's like an 11-year-old crazy energetic kid who loves soccer and basketball and Marvel movies. And academically, he's pretty meaningfully behind his peers, a couple years behind. And he struggles with social cues. So like as an example, a couple of months ago, he came up to me and said, "Hey, Dad, my friend invited me to the movies." And I'm like, "That's awesome, dude. Like nobody's ever invited to the movies before." I was like, "That's cool." And then Friday, he comes home and says, with deep sadness. Deep sadness in his face, and he says, "My friend said I'm not welcome." And I was like, man. But anyway, so when he said that, I come to find out he wasn't really invited to begin with. He just misread a situation and assumed he was invited. And many people with autism do that. He doesn't understand when someone's making fun of him, or he doesn't understand when someone's being sarcastic, right? He can't read between the lines like most people can. It's very black and white for him, and so that's really common. And then last but not least, we have Ed Ceballos, or Francisco Ceballos, so the son of Ed Ceballos, who's the director or the head of partnerships here at Everflow. He has a son with autism, and I share that because there are way more people with autism, around us than we know. and they're just all over. We may not know it. And then there's someone here I spoke with yesterday, who said that she's autistic and she doesn't even put it on her LinkedIn profile because she's afraid she's not going to get employed. And so that's a reality. We have data on that. We've done tests to show that similar resumes, even with the same exact resume, same exact qualifications, if you openly admit that you have autism, you're less likely to get employed. And so basically, it's time to give them a fighting chance. And a lot of folks, naturally and understandably, tend to focus on the inabilities associated with autism, but each individual tends to have exceptional abilities as well, superpowers, like I said earlier. In the case of my son, he has a great memory, that's his superpower. And so he can, after watching a movie once or twice, he can basically repeat the entire movie for every single character, the entire script, word for word, including the mannerisms. This is really cool. I don't know how that maps to roles in the workforce, but we're gonna figure it out. And then he, again, another memory thing. I could say, hey buddy, tell me about The Little Mermaid. He's like, well dad, it was made in 1989 and it's got a runtime of 1 hour, 23 minutes. I'm like, all right. And don't get him started on the history of Marvel. He'll talk your ear off for 3 hours without taking a breath. And so it's but kids like that, they simply don't get a chance. And a lot of it's because they're quirky, they may show up to an interview and they may not make eye contact, or they don't like loud noises, or they can't stand bright lights. It really bothers them. And so it's just different. And so when I think about Mentra and that job platform we're going to talk about today, this is a screenshot of what a candidate sees when filling out their candidate profile in Mentra. And so, we ask about what accommodations they need or environmental preferences they need and things like that. But that's just the beginning of what needs to happen. Step one is to get them into the workforce and get them recognized and take their needs into account and all that stuff. But there's a lot more that needs to be done. And so for me, it's all about eliminating dependence. I could go and talk for hours about the system that's been created that makes this population dependent on a lot. But in general, there are millions of people in the US with autism, and over 80% are either underemployed or unemployed. And once they're 21, there aren't too many programs available. It's good luck, hopefully you have a great trust fund, or you can live with your parents or your siblings for the rest of your life. There's really nothing out there for them. And so again, they're very dependent on family or charity or state or federal funding, but all of that is completely, frankly, unreliable. But why? Why are all of those things unreliable? And that's because all of these are completely dependent, all of those family, charity, state and federal funding, it relies solely on the goodwill of human beings, which is completely unpredictable. And I know that I don't want to have my son's future dependent on charity or the goodwill of human beings. There needs to be a financially self-sustaining infrastructure to help them, live their best life. But I know you wouldn't want that for your children either. And so, that realization that everything, the entire system is dependent on the goodwill of human beings, started, basically that realization was the catalyst that drove my passion for looking into this and saying, is there a solution available? And I was like, okay, so through my Pathways for Autism nonprofit, I started doing just research. I started dedicating about 10 hours a week of my time to speaking with everybody I possibly could. Doctors, attorneys, employers, parents, colleges, universities. I was taking every meeting I possibly could in search of, are there people out there that are employing hundreds or maybe even thousands of people with autism? I hadn't heard of it before, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I was just taking a lot of calls. And then I quickly realized the conclusions I found were that nothing repeatable or scalable exists. I would find little pockets of 20 or 30 or 40 people that are being hired with autism, or maybe I'd find some large enterprise organization that hired 200, but they would openly admit to me, oh yeah, well we want to do good and we hired 200, we're losing money on it left and right. And I'm like, that's not scalable. It's not something we can go share with other companies and have them replicate, right? And so that's when I realized that building this infrastructure was my life's purpose. And so I know that it will take decades. There's a lot to be done, right? And so for me, my life is already spent. It's just a matter of how much I can accomplish, before I pass, right? And so hopefully that's a lot, right? And so that's why I kind of made a commitment to myself that I'd be out of the private business world here in the next 18 months so I can go focus on that. And that's when I got into, talk about Mentra. So as I was doing my research, I came across Mentra, and I heard about this venture-backed startup that was helping neurodiverse individuals get hired. I'm like, what the heck's neurodiverse? I heard of autism before, and that was a tough one to learn. And then it's neurodiverse is this overarching umbrella that has autism and ADHD and dyslexia and PTSD. There's lots of things that fall under that neurodiverse umbrella. And Mentra, put simply, they have employers that post jobs, they have candidates that fill out their profiles, all their preferences and accommodations, then they have an AI-powered algorithm that does matching between them, right? So that's pretty cool, it's pretty straightforward. And then I found out that they're backed by Sam Altman. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Sam Altman, he's the CEO and founder of OpenAI, which is, which owns ChatGPT. I'm sure everyone's heard about ChatGPT, right? And that's cool. I was like, I kind of dismissed it at first, because I'm sure everyone's seen here on LinkedIn where you see some startup founder who's like, oh yeah, Mark Benioff invested in my startup. Mark Benioff doesn't even know the name of your company. Like, one of his funds invested in your startup, and he doesn't know who you are. That is not the same as Sam Altman. Like, they have been to his home. Fact, like, Sam Altman's chef got the CEO of Mentra sick with COVID, and so she got to stay in Sam's guest house for a week, which wasn't too bad. So then I'm like, all right, so this is obviously not a passive investment. Like, they can call this guy, they can text him, that's really cool. And so I was like, I need to reach out to one of these co-founders and find out, like, what can I do with Mentra? And so I reached out. This is just 4 months ago. This is not that long ago. And of course, there was a glaring typo I meant to write, and I'd enjoy getting to know you and your firm better, but I wrote, and I'd getting to know you and your firm better. So that was a great first impression. But we got through it. What I learned is that, they have all this, they were kind of famous. They're starting to get a lot of publicity. These guys are, Connor and his co-founder, Jilica, are fresh out of Georgia Tech. They've never run a startup before. They have all this wonderful enterprise pipeline, and they've got all this publicity, and they don't really know like how to manage it. And that's like my core skill set. And so so as I started learning about where they were going and who they were backed by, I'm like, okay, well, I can use my skill set to help them get where they need to go, because I feel like their success will be critical to what it is that I'm trying to do at Pathways, right? Because they're going to get the Fortune 1000 to post 100% of their open roles into the Mentra platform so neurodiverse candidates can apply. And in fact, Microsoft just committed last week to putting 100% of their open roles through the Mentra platform. So it's like they're making their way. And I can tell you there's a lot of enterprise deals that they're in. So this is a very, very good thing. Moving on from there, but that's just like one part of the challenge. Like, this is still step one for me, is making sure that these candidates can be heard, they can find jobs. But there's like this unspoken hiring challenge that I don't think gets said aloud very often. But most employers are fearful kind of that they'll hire somebody from this population, they won't have the right support, and that they're gonna have to terminate, and then they're gonna get sued. Because like, nobody wants to be the employer that hires the autistic intern and then fires them and gets sued. Like, it's just not a good look. And it's a risk, and and they're not willing to take on that risk 9 times out of 10. And so that's where, my nonprofit organization, again, Pathways for Autism, de-risks that direct employment relationship by becoming the employer of record for those companies who either don't have or aren't ready to invest in a neuro-inclusive environment. And so we can take all of these employees and we can provide them with the support and the services and the job coaching and all of that stuff, under us, without the employer having to take that on. And if there needs to be, if they need to terminate or remove the employee, like, we pull them from that position, we put somebody else in, we can go ahead and do some remediation or training of some sort and get them back up to speed. And so after my session, I'm like happy to talk anyone through like how we're going to accomplish what I'm promising here, but there's a lot of possibilities, and so I thought I'd kind of give you a bigger picture into what's possible. So, and like as this scales. So one, we have the potential to become the largest employer in the US by 2034. To hit that, you only have to employ 3 million people. And there's a lot more than that with autism here in the US and across the globe, and so that is highly achievable. Now, once we get 100% of the employable workforce, remember there's a portion of this workforce that isn't employable, right? It's just they don't have the capability to work. But when we get to the point where we employ 100% of the employable workforce, it has an annual recurring economic impact of $600 billion in the US alone. It's a large impact. This population carries major purchasing power and earning capability, and that gets into the trillions globally. Now, out of that 600 billion, 400 billion of that is income earned by the population that is currently earning almost nothing today. And the other 200 billion is savings, tax savings for, we don't have to go fund extra services. Like, this population is going to work on their own, or they're going to be able to afford their own services and things like that. So it is a $600 billion economic impact. And along the way, as part of the model, we're going to be pumping hundreds of millions of dollars back into local communities. So as these employees work, they come to work for Pathways, to work for whatever employer they happen to go perform their work for. We'll take a portion of that revenue and put it back into that local community. So whether they're coming from New York City and they've got lots of funding, or from like Podunk, backwoods, wherever, like, it doesn't matter. We're going to pump money into that local community to ensure there's local programming and support and systems in place that gets this population into the workforce and as quickly as humanly possible. Next is along the way, we're going to hit a point where we hit critical mass in certain cities. Let's take Orlando for example. What if we get to a point where we have 1,000 employees in Orlando? They might be working for 300 different companies. Doesn't matter, but maybe they want to go work in an office. And so because this population tends to stay in their jobs for a really long amount of time, like we can financially justify acquiring commercial real estate in all 50 states and doing custom build-outs to basically give them like the environment that they need to succeed, like and build out that custom environment. And then of course, along the way, this population also needs a lot of everyday services just like you and I. We need to buy cars, we need to buy a house, we need insurance, we need all that stuff, and we need to do it without being taken advantage of. Like it's hard enough for like the average human being to like figure out their freaking insurance policy. Like, can you imagine being neurodivergent and like knowing none of this stuff and like you have to go do it? You're just gonna get taken advantage of. And so we're gonna be building and acquiring like all of those services and those service entities for those core needs to make sure that the population is taken care of and not taken advantage of. And so the end result, for me, like my desired outcome that we talked about earlier is a financially self-sustaining infrastructure that allows every individual with autism to live their best lives while being as financially independent as humanly possible. And, that's really not all of it though. Like, we need to ensure that no one person or organization kind of owns that infrastructure, because again, we can't trust individual human beings to do the right thing. And so this entire infrastructure, including all entities and all real estate, will be 100% owned and governed by the community. And so for those of you earlier who said you knew somebody with autism, now's the time to go, check this out and register, scan that, pull out your phones and scan that QR code and register to become an autism advocate. Now, you have an opportunity today to kind of make that difference and be a part of this. And, when you scan that, it's going to take you to a page to become a neurodiversity advocate. But you can put on your profile, autism advocate, dyslexia advocate, PTSD advocate, whatever, is closest to home for you. That's something that you can do. And just kind of help spread our message even further by putting it out there. And of course, we'll have events and we'll send you swag and we'll do all of that good stuff. But even if just one company notices this on your profile and they take action, like you could forever impact somebody's life. And of course, I'd be forever grateful to you for helping me serve my life's purpose. Now, enough about me and my life's purpose. Let's get to you and your life's purpose. So there was a study done back in 2019 by a group of researchers, and they were focusing on purpose and the impact of having a purpose. And they defined purpose as a self-organizing life aim that stimulates goals. And so they studied 7,000 Americans between the ages of 51 and 61, included two things. The first being people who didn't have a strong life purpose were more likely to die than those who did, and specifically more likely to die of cardiovascular diseases. And the second conclusion is, having a life purpose appeared to be more important for decreasing risk of death than drinking, smoking, or exercising. So as you're drinking tonight, just drink with purpose and you'll be fine, okay? Anyway, so now I'm going to give you some exercises you can do on your own to help get the wheels turning around kind of defining and acting on your own life's purpose. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be some grandiose thing, like your life's purpose could be sitting on a beach in Hawaii and like kind of living your best life. That's absolutely an acceptable life outcome. I'm not here to guilt you into doing something you don't want to do. But in general, if you would like more than that, then here's a few independent exercises you can do to kind of get started. And the first one is finding joyful passion. So remember, passion often leads to purpose. And so, you had to ask yourself, which moments have brought you the most joy? And so that could be, meeting your partner, having or adopting a child, seeing a mentee achieve that you're mentoring. It could be creating a piece of art that's meaningful to you. It could be that awesome annual family camping trip or whatever you do that brings you joy every single year. Either way, there's probably passion buried in those joyful moments. So, how can you help others feel those same joys? And so helping others feel a joy that you're passionate about could be your purpose, right? You don't have to, again, do some grandiose thing. And you can also have more than one joy. You're allowed. And try to share that with others and experiment and see what makes you feel fulfilled. The second exercise is end-of-life reflection planning. So in this scenario, you get the luxury of passing at an old age. You're now in your final moments, reflecting back on your entire life. What will you have accomplished? Who did you impact? And how would others describe your impact? Or how would you want others to describe your impact? And so you have the luxury of defining these answers today, like, and setting yourself on the right path, towards getting there. Because I can tell you at the end of my life, I'm not going to be there like sitting around reflecting on, how many B2B companies I helped co-sell effectively with their partners, or how many AI headshots I sold. Like, nobody gives a crap about that. Like, I'm passionate about co-selling, I'm very good at it, but like when I wake up in the morning, like this is what I think about, right? And my life's purpose. And the last thing you can do is you can turn pain into purchase. Pain into purpose. So chances are, you've been through some kind of truly deep pain in your life that you've somehow overcome, or maybe you're dealing with currently. Well, the first thing is you're not alone, and you never are. Everyone has had or is currently experiencing pain, and there are people out there right now in this very moment that is experiencing that exact same pain that you either are going through or went through in the past. And so one way to serve your purpose is to help others overcome that same pain by using your experience. And so you want to ask yourself, how can you find others and help them overcome that same pain? And so there's a few steps for this. Step one is just list your pains. Like, we've all overcome certain things, and we know it was hard, and we know we made it, and like it might have been like really, really difficult, but list out all the things that you overcame. And then identify how you can find others who may be experiencing that same pain. And it may be a little awkward, like you can do a Facebook post or a LinkedIn post and say, has anybody been through a really nasty divorce? Or like, whatever that may be that pain is, like, put a feeler out there. Chances are somebody will speak up because it will touch them in that moment and resonate. And then just schedule a chat or a meetup, or and say, hey, let's grab lunch, let's go have a conversation about this. And just basic conversation and being a shoulder for someone else to lean on can feel very fulfilling and give you a whole lot of purpose. So you will feel fulfilled. And then once you think you know your purpose, it's simple. Just like write it down. Create a vision statement for your life, and you'll know when it feels right. You'll know when it's right because it just feels right on the inside. Like, I know that I feel very different when I wake up every morning now than I did even just a few months ago before I started doing things with Mentra and all the research I was doing with Pathways. Like, it's a very different experience. And document the milestones you need to achieve, your life's purpose. And start by just focusing on achieving milestone number one. Like, don't go crazy and don't try to do some grandiose thing right out of the gate and fail and then quit. Like, go find something that's, don't boil the ocean. Find something that is very reasonable, achievable, and just kind of go after it. And then with that, that's the end of my presentation. But in the words of Sean Allaire, we now get to enjoy tonight's festivities and company. And I thank you for your time. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and chat with me anytime. Thank you.